going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. And you may be saying, there wasn't a new magic story this week. You're right, there wasn't a new magic story this week. But as you'll be able to tell from the title down below, what we decided to do was, this year, we were in Theros. And we were on Zendikar again. And so, thinking about Theros and about Zendikar, we wanted to go back because for people that aren't aware of how we started here with JaAR on this channel at least, when the Battle for Zendikar stories came out, Amy and I would get together, as we would do, as, you know, people who were dating. But while we were together, one of the things that we did together was we would read the Battle for Zendikar stories, and then later the Oath of the Gatewatch stories. But
it wasn't date night. You made it sound like it was our date night.
No, I'm just saying we would get together, and then while we were hanging out, one of the things we would do when we hung out was read the stories. But yes, you're right. That was not our idea of a date. But we read those stories.
If it's your idea of a date, we're not judging it. It just wasn't ours.
Yeah. But we would get together and we would read the stories, and we would spend a lot of time afterwards talking about them with each other. We had our friend Dave join us once for one of the stories, which we'll talk about when we get to it, because we're going to get to it. But I figured it might be nice, since we are kind of in a bit of a drought, and we wanted to do this before they went back to the weekly stories, but now this is giving us a good enough excuse to do so. We're going to go back and review the Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch stories. Because, as I said, we read them back then, we enjoyed them, we analyzed them, but it was just the two of us. And now we want to bring in the rest of the community as well. So for this week, this doesn't exactly count, but if you go to Wizard's website and you go to the story tab and you go to the Zendikar story, which is the Battle for Zendikar story, the first story listed there among the weekly stories is this one. So the story we're reviewing today is Drop for Drop by Kelly Diggs. And so, like I said, I don't believe that this one counts, but it is a transitionary story between Theros and Battle for Zendikar.
Yeah.
And since Kiora is present in Battle for Zendikar, and you need to know how she got the Bident, and the God's End story for original Theros mainly followed Elspeth and Ajani, this story was there to kind of show you how Kiora transitions from God's End to now. But I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. My quick review at the beginning of this one is, it's an older story. It was of the time where they knew what they were doing, right? They had a plan going forward. And I will say that if you want more information about Thassa, if you want more information about Kiora, and or if you want more information about how Kiora got Thassa's Bident, this is a good one. I thought it was well written. I thought it was interesting. So for that reason, I would recommend this story to anyone who is interested in it. What about you?
I mean, I would recommend people read it. I guess I didn't feel as strongly about it as you did. Maybe I went in with a bit too much of an expectation of, oh my god, like, this is gonna be old school story team. You know? Well,
and we will get there, I'm sure. Again, this is... Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
This is one of the transitionary ones.
Right.
Right, so this isn't like into the meat and potatoes. It's just like, hey, you need to understand why she has a Bident. We need to turn it into a whole story. Here's the whole story.
I felt that it was a transitionary one.
Fair enough. I mean, interestingly, though, looking back on it now in hindsight, it's kind of interesting because this story talks about Eryximethys a fair amount, right? The slumbering isle. And it reads like the side stories did for this Zendikar Rising set. Because it was like, hey, here are some characters that we're going to talk to you about but also there's going to be like a random legendary creature from the set thrown in that we can talk about as well. So that was the kind of thing that I appreciated that, because it was like, oh, okay, they're even doing that now, so it's not like that's a new thing that they just came up with.
Okay.
Right? For Zendikar Rising, it actually, when you go back, it actually did exist back then as well.
Okay, so you got that like cool harken back moment, I guess.
Yeah.
See, for me, I didn't like that aspect of it as much, because it felt like a side story instead of like a meat and potato story.
Sure. Which it like, kind of was, arguably. So that's fair.
It felt tertiary and less important. It wasn't until the climax of the story that I became interested in the story.
All right.
Which, you know, I don't know.
Well, so that's a good point, though. So if that is something that sounds interesting to you, then feel free to go read that story. Like I said, it's actually not that hard to find. It is called Drop for Drop by Kelly Diggs, so you could just search that in Google. Or, like I said, go to the story tab, scroll down, load more a couple of times, and you'll get Zendikar, right? Go back by set. Get to Zendikar, click on that, and then click on the stories, and it'll be the first one on your left. So if that's something that you want to read, we encourage that you go read that story and then come back here and join us for our review. If you've already read it and you feel like you're going to remember it, awesome. If not, if you feel like you want a refresher, it actually wasn't that long by any means. So, you know, for that reason as well, it's not super time consuming, and I enjoyed, you know, my time by the end of it. So, yeah, so that was really nice. But yeah, I guess on to the full review itself. Just as a reminder, here on JaAR, we review, we do not summarize.
Right.
So if you did not read the story and you don't want to be spoiled, like weirdly out of order sometimes, because like we're just talking about what we're talking about, go read the story first. That's why we recommend it.
Yeah.
But what I loved, one of the right out of the bat, at the beginning of the story, italicized text, like a paragraph and a half of recap of what is going on. Two reasons why that's helpful. One, for me, because we're going back, it's a reminder of where we're entering this story, right? We know the stories, but we don't know where we're entering. Like, okay, Kiora's here. Why is Kiora here? When was Kiora here? What part of the story are we reading? Right.
What has already happened prior to this story and what hasn't happened yet?
Yeah. So that was super helpful.
Yeah.
But secondly, and again, I can only surmise this because I am not of this category, but for someone who is new, entering into your story for the first time, if I were that person with the Zendikar Rising stories, I would have probably been super lost. Because they reference the Eldrazi stuff, they reference the War of the Spark situation. So, like, to understand that, do I have to have read all prior Zendikar stories?
Yeah.
Do I have to have read War of the Spark? Both of them? Just the first one? Just the main one
Despite
here?
the fact that they're thick, long novels that you had to spend money on, and a decent amount of money considering what you got for it.
Right. And there have been discussions online recently that I've seen, and I apologize that I can't name names of people who are having those discussions, but I did not come up with this myself. But I heard people discussing the fact that, and this made me think of it, the fact that for the Zendikar Rising stories, like if you want to know that information, it's not like the story says, hey, to find out more about this, go here, right? Comic books at least used to do that back in the day, where somebody would say something and there would be a little asterisk next to what they said, and then in the bottom corner there was an annotation. For more on this, read Black Panther number 25.
Oh, okay, that's really cool.
Right, so it would give you an annotation. So even if you were reading X-Men, right, an X-Men comic, I'm going to use Marvel because I'm a fan of them, but regardless, whatever you want to put there, you know, and Wolverine's talking to Storm about like, well, when you next go to Wakanda, I wonder what's going to happen. And then it's like, to find out more about Storm's story, read Black Panther number 25, right? That is really important so that you can say, hey, here is the conjoined world that this is all a part of.
Right.
So in here, when Kiora is talking about being there and being with Elspeth and with Ajani, the recap at the beginning is telling you, hey, this is how, did I say? Yeah. This is how Kiora got to be with Elspeth and Ajani. This is what Elspeth and Ajani have been up to.
Yeah.
This is what Kiora has been up to. And it was also, to be fair, an explanation as to why this story existed. Because it was like, hey, God's End talked about Elspeth and Ajani's story. Mm-hmm. But it kind of cut off Kiora's story here. This is the continuation of Kiora's story.
Right.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah.
Thanks. You know, I'll digress slightly for one more second. But I'm a wrestling fan. Specifically WWE, but wrestling in general, because, you know, if I had more of an occasion to watch AEW, I'm sure I would watch a hell of a lot of that as well. But when wrestlers are fighting one another, right, especially in like a pay-per-view match, like a big-time match, before that match starts, it's probably important to have like a recap fest of all the things that happened to lead up to their fight. They didn't just walk up to each other and go, "You want to fight?" Right. And then just have a pay-per-view match against one another. There's lead up to that. There's a backstory there.
Right.
And so,
albeit sometimes rather shitty storyline.
Amy loves wrestling.
I love good technical wrestlers.
Oh, okay, there you go. We've been to many shows and stuff together, but yeah, they're definitely, we're both more than willing, but Amy more so than I feel, more than willing to call out nonsense when it comes to wrestling. But regardless, like I said, that's a digression, but it's an idea of like, if you just show up and watch the big pay-per-view matches, even from 10 years ago, right? You're like, you have to watch The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? That match at, sure, I'll throw it out there, at WrestleMania 19, one of my favorite matches of all time. That match was very good, but if you're watching it, it kind of cheapens it if you don't know what led up to it. To at least a degree, right? I mean, just to be like, it's Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, fine. But if it were... If you're...
doesn't for me, because I don't care about the storyline one iota. I just care about seeing them wrestle and like seeing how good each of them are.
Sure.
And how good they are together in their sort of their chemistry with one another and, and things like that.
Yeah, and that was definitely a hell of a thing. But that's what I'm talking about. You, for me at least, you need that context to be able to catapult it from like a good match to an amazing story.
Yes.
And so for this could have been a random blip of a story. Or it could have been woven into the fabric of the world of Magic the Gathering's planes. And that's what was done. Okay. With just that recap in the beginning. It gives you so much context. So much. That without it, it wouldn't have made as much sense. So that kind of thing is awesome. For the first Zendikar Rising story, it wouldn't have killed you to have had a paragraph or two detailing Zendikar, Battle for Zendikar, whatever, and or like a blip of War of the Spark. Just like, you know, the last time that Nissa and Nahiri saw each other was wherever. Like, they tried to do it within the story, but like this allows you to have that moment in the beginning of like, this is still a story, this is a narrator explaining to you where they've been previously, but you get that, it's done, and then you can focus more on the actual storytelling portion.
Okay.
So.
See, I feel like it's a little less immersive that way to have like a backstory dump at the beginning of the story. Okay. But the other side of that same coin is how much less immersive is it if you're reading the story and you have no clue what the hell they're talking about.
Right, so, exactly. And sorry, so I referenced this earlier.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Right. I referenced this earlier and I think I kind of moved away from it. But otherwise, the situation is if a new reader comes to your story and starts to read it and doesn't understand and really wants to understand, the only place they have to go are like fan-made wikis. Which, to be fair, are made by super passionate people. And I am in no way speaking down about fan-made wikis. What I'm speaking down about are companies being willing to bow to whatever is written on those fan-made wikis. Because the company should be able to control its own dissemination of story information. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
Like, that's just, and again, like I said, I can't quote who it was, but Magic the Gathering is not the only fandom where that's an issue.
Yeah.
Because...
I'm sure it's not.
Right. Because there are other popular fantasy franchises, if you will, that's the case. That if you want to enter into that story, you have to go online, find fan-made information gathering things, whether they be articles, videos, what have you, and that's where you learn about what has previously happened in the story. You know, the number
That's
of...
a little bit silly.
Right. Well, the number of posts I've seen between Twitter, Reddit, etc., of somebody starting and saying, okay, I want to read the Zendikar Rising stories, what background do I need? That's a lot.
I mean, all of it? Like...
But that's their point, is that, like, you know, I want to enjoy this story.
2 decades worth of information?
And that's a bit of a problem, right? Because it's like, I'd like to enter into your fandom, please. How do I do that? Well, here's the next 5 years of your life. Read all of this, and then you can read this story that comes out today, but 5 years from now. Which also means you'll then have to catch up on the next 5 years. It's like, obviously I'm exaggerating, right? It's not 5 years, but still.
But that goes back to why Wizards will sit there and complain that the Vorthos community isn't large enough, or doesn't do enough to convey their love for Magic the Gathering. Okay, well, there'd be more people joining up to the Vorthos community if there was any way for them to do so.
Right.
That made sense. I mean, to ask the fans who are just starting to be fans to throw themselves into some sort of rabbit hole online in order to get any bit of information is a bit silly. It's just absurd.
Right. So that's like a huge digression, but I think was important to at least discuss. But yeah, that's what that little blip at the beginning made us think of, is that, like, you know, this is a nice thing. Well, but now,
because I didn't think of that, but that's because I didn't realize that was the case.
Okay.
With the fan made being being all that they would be able to reference.
Right. I mean, again, you can go back and now, I mean, obviously you can go back and read the Battle for Zendikar stories. But I mean, like, if you want a recap, right? If you want, like, so that's the other part, because I feel like we're not reviewing the story, but we'll get there in a second. Amy, and all of you out there as well, I want this to be a little bit of a game.
Oh boy.
Without going to the website and looking it up, because I did this for you already, and I'll tell you in a minute, but I'm curious what people think. Okay. If you had to guess, even though this kind of doesn't count like it's transitionary, but it counts to a degree, if you had to guess on Wizards' website, if you click on Zendikar, which is Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch, and click on stories, how many stories fall under the umbrella on Wizards' website of Zendikar?
Oh boy.
And this is Battle for Zendikar and Oath of the Gatewatch, plus, again, transitionary prior to it, but not original Zendikar. So, for those two, how many stories, and I want Amy to guess, but before Amy guesses, I want you all to guess. I want you to put your guess down in the comments below, or, like, remember it. Commit it to memory. And then once I've told you, I want you to write in the comments and be like, holy crap, I thought it was this, and it turns out it was the number that it was. That's crazy. You know, if you overestimate, if you underestimate, if you get it right on, be honest, right? Like, you know, congrats to you, that's awesome. But if you don't lie and say that you guessed it immediately. That's no fun. That's not what this is about. But yes, so write your answers, think about it, give yourself a minute, and now I want to hear from Amy. What do you think? Take a guess.
I have no idea. Like 30? Is it 30?
Oh, it's 31.
Yes.
All right, well, Price is Right. Price is Right rules. Amy gets it, folks. That's it. We're going home. Good night, everybody. God damn it.
Like Zach. We know.
I was legit
the luck side.
like these are my notes. I was holding it this way. She couldn't see it. I was holding it sideways.
Oh no, I definitely had no idea.
That's hilarious. Anyway, yes, there are 31 of these stories. So that's kind of my point, right? Somebody wants to read Zendikar Rising, and you tell them, well, hey, the Battle for Zendikar stories and Oath of the Gatewatch stories are on the website. Go read those. There's 31 of them. You're expecting somebody to read 31 stories before reading Zendikar Rising to get all of the background information that they need? That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so on to the story itself, right? I enjoyed, because there really isn't a lot, like the story was fine, and that's why we're saying, but to like analyze it, there's not a ton. There's some. Kiora talks about the gods that she used to pray to on Zendikar. She and the other merfolk. Mm-hmm. Cozy, she mentions.
Right.
Or Cozy. I always thought of it as Cozy, but that's just because I know that it's Kozilek, so maybe it's Cozy, but regardless, Cosi is the god that she used to worship, and the other merfolk would worship Cozy or Emeria or Ula, which we all know, Kozilek, Emrakul, Ulamog. Which, first of all, is brilliant. I've always loved that. I've always thought that. Yeah.
It's so just thoroughly indicative of exactly what it would be like.
Yeah.
In real life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in history.
Yeah. Things passed down from generation to generation, but like misunderstood
and really change from generation to generation. And it's sort of inadvertent, but that's just kind of the way that life works and humans work and history works.
But Kiora's point in bringing it up is now she's on Theros. And Theros has actual gods. Like, you can see the gods, you can interact with the gods. And so for Kiora, though, her point is, right, that once Cozy was revealed as Kozilek, her whole world was shattered. She spent time praying to this godlike figure that turned out to just be a creature of wanton destruction. And she said that at least Cozy was not lying because it was considering itself a trickster god, right? Or it put itself out there as a trickster god. It wasn't lying, whereas Emeria and Ula were like, I guess, more traditional deity-like figures that were like, loving and etc. of their flock and their followers.
Yeah, but I mean, that whole concept that she mentioned was a bit absurd. She was blaming the Eldrazi for having put forth those personas.
Yeah, misunderstood stories or whatever.
But they didn't do that.
Right.
That was put on them by the people. Right. I mean, and they had no concept of it. They literally had no concept of it.
Right.
So it's not even like they could sit there and say, oh, that's what they want me to be. I'll attempt to do that.
Right.
Or, I'll apologize for not being that way.
Yeah.
Which they would never be able to do because they're the frickin' Eldrazi anyway. I mean...
Right. But the reason
Emrakul could do that because
Yeah.
she has like enough presence of mind to do that, but Ulamog was never going to be able to have any cognizance like that.
No, at least not to any knowledge that we've heard up to this point. Like Ulamog and Kozilek didn't seem to have words-based consciousness,
right?
Like that type of higher level intelligence associated with them.
But like even if they did, like there's no reason to blame them for the fact that. The changing of their personas from, decades or centuries or however long it was, they were completely not even aware of how they were being perceived.
Right. And so the reason that Thassa brings this up is because, not Thassa, Kiora. I did that multiple times in my head during the story. The reason that Kiora brings this up is because her point is she worshipped Cozy and then helped fight against Kozilek. And so her point was praying to the gods, she reasoned, was for people. God bless you. God bless you.
Gosh.
Praying to the gods, she reasoned, was for people who had never fought one.
Yeah.
That's a great line. That's so cool.
I mean, what a line. I mean, how... That's so impactful. I mean, if we're talking about analyzing a story, I could analyze just that one line for forever, when realistically, that's the only line that I feel like I could analyze.
Right. And yet, it's very much... It's very traditional, I feel like, that's how Wizards focuses on godlike figures, is that, like, there's always at least that one person, right? Gideon was the same way, where you present Gideon with gods, and he is distrustful of the gods because he was originally on Theros, and then when he went to Amonkhet, and there were, again, physical gods that he could interact with, he had issue, right? So you take people or people who are originally from planes with godlike figures that become problematic in one way or another for them, and then they go to other planes and they're going to interact with those other planes' deities problematically.
Yeah.
Right? And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you have issue with one thing, and then you go and experience that thing elsewhere where it's not at all like the way you experience that original thing, you're still going to have distrust for it, or at least like hesitate against it, right? So that makes perfect sense. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah,
was really cool.
and I mean, a great way to apply that to history would be to say, you know, Theros is kind of like a Grecian or Roman sort of style plane.
Yep.
So it makes sense for the gods there to be very, you know, powerful and exerting their power on humans and not being very benevolent or very grateful for being praised by the humans and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there are other bits of history that Wizards has sort of emulated for their other sets, that where the gods weren't like that in that location or that period of time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so that makes perfect sense, because ancient Egyptian gods were extremely powerful, and they weren't necessarily, you know, benevolent either, but they were still very loved by the people who worshipped them.
Oh yeah.
Probably in a way that Grecian and Roman gods really were not.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Yeah, and so...
Because they kind of worshipped their gods a little bit more out of fear or out of desperation for something.
Right.
And less because they just loved them.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep. I to be honest with you, there's not a lot more to talk about with this. Like, again, like I said, the Biden thing is at the end, if you want to find it out. It was actually kind of cool that Kiora got to, like, trick Thassa a little bit and be a little bit sassy about it, which I appreciated. That's very Kiora of her.
I thought of Tinkerbell a little bit there, where she was like, oh, you're a lot less powerful if they don't believe in you.
Sure. And that was really cool. Yeah. And then Thassa didn't care and just turned the serpent that Kiora was on and turned it around and started just eating the followers, which was awesome. But the last bit that I thought was interesting was just a bit of, like, Planeswalker magic-based stuff that Kiora was able to... I had forgotten or didn't remember this at all, or didn't know it at all, I should say, in the first place. But Kiora was able to pull Leviathan-based, like, sea creatures, right, from other planes through the Blind Eternities into the waters of Theros. That's not a thing that I was aware of people being able to do. That's why everybody was so curious about Mowu when Jiang Yungu brought Mowu across planes, and it turns out the only way that we know Jiang Yungu was able to do it was by turning Mowu into a statue first, and then bringing the statue through, which is a very D&D thing. That's just a thing that they have, like, little statuettes that turn into creatures when you, like, say their name or whatever. But that's how that was done, and we we understood that explanation and appreciated it, but
Yeah.
now you just have Kiora pulling these creatures straight through the blind eternities, and maybe it has to do with her connection to them, right? When she tries to connect to them, like she did with, or attempted to do with Eryximethys here. But I just thought that was interesting. It was just a cool
Yeah, it's great
bit
to
of
know
magic.
that information and to know that that information actually happened prior to all this newer information that we have. Because it's like, whoa, okay, so it kind of opens your eyes to so many more like possibilities that you didn't see because you didn't go that far back in the stories.
Right. So that was really cool. And again, I was surprised that I hadn't heard that prior to now. So
Yeah.
Apologies for not knowing that if you're sitting there like, yeah, Joe,
And I'm
duh.
sure there's so many other people who didn't either because if they didn't go back that far,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's why there would be theories like that.
Right.
Like the statue and
Right.
whatever.
So, I mean, hey, as I said, or maybe I didn't say it and maybe I implied it, but we're going to be back next week for another one. And if and when Wizards turns around and is like, hey, whatever the Viking set's name is, whose name I'm not going to remember right now, but hey, the Viking set stories start next week. Okay, well then we'll take a break from this, do the Viking stories, and then when they stop, because it will not be nonstop, we will return to this. But for now, we've got some stories, folks. We're going to be doing it. We would love to hear your opinions down below. I won't lie to you, the last time we tried to do like flashback stories from the website, it didn't work out well, but that's because we didn't know what we were talking about. We just like picked a random story and started reading it and started reviewing it and people were upset by that. And that's perfectly fair, and that was something that we decided we would not do anymore, but because these were stories that we're familiar with, we read them previously, etc., we decided we would come back to these because we were at a proper point nowadays where it made sense to go back to those older ones and talk about them. So...
And kind of remember the stuff because it definitely... Like, I knew the basics of it, but that was it.
Yeah, but it's been a long time for us, so it's nice to return to. It's like coming home. So it feels really good, and I'm looking forward to the next few weeks, many weeks. And I hope you all are as well. We would love, like I said, your opinions down in the comments below.
Yes.
Giving us those opinions, going back and reading these stories and reminiscing about them with us, with your fellow commenters, with your fellow Vorthos, is a great way to join us in showing off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
We're keeping it going. There's no reason not to. These stories are going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Comment, please.
Yes,
history, old story information.
We would love it.
Anything you want to say.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you. You can do all the other fun YouTube stuff as well, like, subscribe, share, ring that bell for notifications. We stream MTG Arena every Monday, if you were unaware.
Yes.
And Fridays on this channel, we are still streaming. These are both Monday and Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time here in the U.S. If you are unaware, though, Fridays have now moved from MTG Arena over to general video game content.
Yes.
This past Friday, as well as tomorrow, this video comes out on Thursday, as well as tomorrow, we are continuing to play Don't Starve Together.
Yes.
With our good friend Dave over at twitch.tv/DAM314. It'll be on this channel as well, but his side of it will be over there. We had a blast this past Friday. It was super fun. It was our first time playing it. It was very, very good. We hope you joined us on Wednesday as well, if you saw it. That was only over on, that'll be over here was over here as well. So if you missed that, the VODs of those are over on Video Games for All. That link to that down in the description below, along with our socials and Gluten Free for All as well. So you should check all of that stuff out. Yeah. We really do hope you're enjoying everything we're putting out for all of you. Please feel free, as we said, any and all feedback. We're always interested in hearing it.
Yes.
We love hearing from each and every one of you. So, thank you all so very much for watching. I really do hope everybody
all your
enjoyed.
analysis on that line that I didn't talk about any of my analysis. Leave it in the comments.
Yeah.
Because I will pour over it.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. So, for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.